A pleasant good morning to the Honorable John Briceño, Prime Minister of Belize, his ministers, ministers of state,
and members to the leader of the opposition, his members,
and Madam Speaker. Let us pray. Almighty and eternal God, who through Jesus Christ has revealed your glory to all nations, please protect and preserve Belize, our beloved country. God of might, wisdom, and justice, please assist our Belizean government and people with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude. Let the light of your divine wisdom direct your plans and endeavors, so that with your help we may attain our just objectives. With your guidance, may all our endeavors tend to peace, social justice, liberty, national happiness, the increase of industry, sobriety, and useful knowledge. We pray, O God of mercy, for all of us, that we may be blessed in the knowledge and sanctified in the observance of your most holy law, that we may be preserved in union in the peace which the world itself cannot give. And after enjoying the blessings of this life, please admit us, dear Lord, to the eternal reward that you have prepared for those who love you. Amen.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Good morning, honorable members. As per Standing Order 84 on absences, the office received the following notice of absence for today's sitting. Member for Toledo West, member for Corozal South East, member for Belmopan, member for Orange Walk South, member for Cayo North, and member for Queen Square. Members, we meet today in the month of October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. The medical oncologist at the KHMH, Dr. Ramon Yakab, reported on the news recently that the number of breast cancer cases have been increasing. He went on to state there are approximately 300 to 400 new cancer cases per year, and further that patients are coming in with advanced stages of cancer. It is a stark reminder that all of us must do our part to encourage yearly tests and examinations. As parliamentarians, we all have a unique and distinct platform to promote the awareness of cancer. Members, you in particular, have a captive audience with your constituents when you engage with them to encourage them to do their yearly checks. Early detection can increase survival rate, improve quality of life, and reduce mortality. I take this opportunity to salute the Office of the Special Envoy, Her Excellency Rosana Briceño, for all the promotional awareness initiatives on cancer in Belize. The Belize Cancer Society and all other organizations on their programs of awareness, education, and working with Belizeans on the treatment of all types of cancer in Belize, as well as providing support to those affected. Members, before we continue, it would be remiss of me not to raise a matter impacting the staff of the National Assembly. The practice of submitting supplementary orders a day or two before House meetings creates an inordinate amount of pressure on the limited number of staff. Please let me be clear, so there is no political mischief made with my words. This is not a criticism of any one administration, because frankly, the practice has been a challenge for all administrations, successive administrations. The last parliamentary term, 2015 to 2019, had 21 sittings of the House. To date, since December 2020, this 13th session of Parliament has had 48 sittings, in addition to an increased number of sittings of the upper house. And committees of both houses have also increased significantly. Yet, the staff complement has not. Therefore, the strain on the staff is greater than before. If ever there was an indicator that it is now time to improve on this, it's when the staff working late to organize the orders that come through this practice gets the message from the CETO system at 9 p.m. that, quote, there are restrictions that prevents them from logging into the system at this time, end quote. Then they have to be at the National Assembly as early as 7 a.m. to continue preparing for the meeting, which are often long days for them as there are procedural matters they have to attend to after the meeting concludes. I therefore make an appeal to those responsible for setting the agenda and the dates to consider this moving forward. And on behalf of the staff, in the coming weeks, proposals will be presented based on the recently concluded consultancies to improve on the organizational structure and staff complement of the National Assembly in order to better service the bicameral system needs of the legislature, the increased amount of sittings and committee meetings, and to improve the working environment for the staff who make what we do as parliamentarians possible. This hopefully should also assist with reducing this strain and assisting with this practice on supplementary orders. I thank you for your consideration on that. And lastly, allow me to welcome representatives from former children parliaments who are present today in the limited visitors space, along with the chairperson of the National Women's Commission, Thea Garcia Ramirez. We have the chair of the NCFC, Ms. Maria Contreras, and the representative from UNICEF. I will not do injustice to your name, my apologies. And we have the executive director of NCFC serving as a chaperone for our youth parliaments. Welcome to the National Assembly. And now to the business of the day. Honorable members, with the consent of the House, I propose to vary the order of the sitting today to allow the introduction of bills at item 12 on the order paper to be taken after the Committee of Supply at item 14. This is to allow the introduction of the General Revenue Supplementary Appropriation 2024-2025 Bill 2024, which, according to Standing Order 71 of the House, cannot be introduced until the proposals have been approved by the Committee of Supply and agreed to by the House. I therefore propose that the House resolve into a Committee of Supply under item Government Business. Is it the wish of the honorable members that the order be varied as suggested? All those in favor kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it.
Papers.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Investment, Civil Aviation, and Immigration.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Speaker. First of all, let me acknowledge the challenges that you're facing with you and your staff. Not only have you done, I think, your staff have done an incredible work in moving from the National Assembly to this temporary space, and probably use some magic to be able to fit us as best as we possibly can. And I think we need to also recognize that the amount of work that this government has been doing has increased tremendously. As you have pointed out, that we have more than doubled the amount of House meetings that we've had in our first 4 years in government compared to the 5 years of the last UDPA administration. And with that comes extra work for your staff. We try to do our very best to be able to have everything on time as best as we possibly can. I want to assure you that there's that it's not deliberate on our part, but the amount of work that we are churning out, and it's just, as you can see, quite a lot. Last night I was getting my papers, and I was working until after 12:30, and had to wake up early this morning to try to finish my one. So I could understand what all you're going through. So maybe we also need to probably take a harder look at your resources and what is it that we need to put in place for us to be able to keep up with the work or the people's work. And so I want to just put on record that I do recognize your concern, and again to assure you that it is not deliberate on our part. It's just that we have so much things happening, and we need to be able to, we have to try to keep up with the work that we have ahead of us. That said, Madam Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper HR 26A 113, supplementary appropriation schedule for fiscal year 2024-2025, and HR 268 1 and 13, Belize Social Investment Audited Statement for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024.
Honorable members, the sessional paper number HR 267A/1/13 is referred to the Committee of Supply for examination, consideration, and report. And sessional paper number HR 268/1/13 is ordered to lie on the table.
Presentation of reports from select committees.
I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Finance and Economic Development Committee.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to lay on the table sessional papers number HR 269/1/13, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the Customs and Excise Duties Amendment number 2 Bill 2024. Number HR 270/1/13, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the Movable Property Security Rights Bill 2024. Number HR 270A/1/13, report from the Finance and Economic Development Committee on the Finance Belize Recognition and Exemption Bill 2024. Thank you.
Honorable members, those reports are ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I rise to present and lay on the table sessional papers number HR 271/1/13, report from the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee on the Criminal Records Rehabilitation of Offenders Amendment number 2 Bill 2024, and number HR 272/1/13, report from the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee on the Misuse of Drugs Amendment Bill 2024. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, those reports are ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Health and Human Development Committee.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper number HR 273/1/13, report from the Health and Human Development Committee on the Global Fund Privileges and Immunities Bill 2024. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Ombudsman Reports Committee.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper, report from the Ombudsman Reports Committee on the 21st Annual Report of the Ombudsman of Belize for the period January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2023. Thank you.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table. I recognize the Honorable Chairperson of the Committee of Selection.
Good morning. Madam Speaker, I rise to present and lay on the table sessional paper number HR 275/1/13, report from the Committee of Selection on the appointment of vacancies in the standing committees of the House of Representatives.
Honorable members, that report is ordered to lie on the table.
Public Business, Government Business, Committee of Supply.
Honorable members, the House will now resolve into a Committee of Supply under the chair of the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Investment, Civil Aviation and Immigration. In accordance with Standing Order 65, the deliberations of this committee shall not take place in public. I must therefore ask visitors and the media to kindly leave at this juncture. They may, of course, return after the Committee of Supply has concluded its business.
Motions.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development, Investment, Civil Aviation and Immigration.
Madam Speaker, this is a supplementary appropriations scheduled for fiscal year 2024-2025, motion 2024. I move that the Committee of Supply has met and approved the proposal set out in sessional paper number HR 267A113, supplementary appropriations scheduled fiscal year 2024 to 2025. Now I seek the indulgence of this honorable House to agree with the proposal approved by the Committee of Supply. I will, in introduction, give more the details of this, Madam Speaker.
Honourable members, the question is, be it resolved that this Honourable House agrees with the proposal approved by the Committee of Supply for supplementary appropriations scheduled for fiscal year 2024-2025, motion 2024. All those in favour kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Madam Speaker, this is a Caribbean Development Bank 9 consolidated line of credit for the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation Loan and Guarantee Motion 2024. Madam Speaker, I move where Section 15(1) of the Development Finance Corporation Act, Chapter 279, Revised Edition 2020, provides that the Development Finance Corporation, DFC, may, with the approval of the Minister of Finance, and subject to the principles of sound fiscal management, borrow sums domestically or internationally for meeting any of its obligations or discharging any of its functions. And whereas Section 15(4) of the DFC Act, as amended by the DFC Corporation Act of 2022, Act number 6 of 2022, further provides that the aggregate domestic debt of or above $5 million Belize dollars shall only be validly entered into pursuant to a resolution of the National Assembly authorizing the DFC to raise the loan or to borrow the money. And whereas the Caribbean Development Bank, which is referred to as the bank, has offered a line of credit totaling $20 million to the DFC to assist in providing finance for priority sectors such as MSME credits, student loans, low-income housing, and energy efficiency and renewable energy. And whereas one of the conditions in which that loan shall be guaranteed by the government of Belize, as per Section 12(1) of the Loans, the Caribbean Development Bank Act, Chapter 74 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, which provides inter alia that the government may, in such manner and on such terms and subject to such conditions as may be agreed by it, and the bank guarantee the discharge by a company of the company's obligations under any agreement for borrowing from the bank. And whereas Section 7, subsection 6 of the Finance and Audit Reform Act, Chapter 15 of the Substantive Laws of Belize, Revised Edition 2020, provides that before the government offers any guarantee or some other form of security in support of any loan made directly to a private sector entity or statutory body by any public or private bank, financial institution, or capital market in or outside Belize, the government shall seek the approval of the National Assembly. And whereas the main terms and conditions of the credit, the line of credit are as follows: the loan amount, US $20 million, allocated as follows: US $18 million from the bank's ordinary capital resources, $2 million from the bank's special fund resources. Rate of interest shall be paid quarterly at the rate of 0.75 per annum on the amount of the SFR, which is the special fund resources portion, and withdrawn and outstanding from time to time, and at the rate of 5.6% per annum on the amount of the OCR portion withdrawn and outstanding from time to time. In effect, what we do, we blend the cheap money with the more expensive, to hoping to be able to reduce the total interest rates to the DFC's customers, in effect. The repayment terms is going to be 68 equal and approximately equal and consecutive quarterly installments on each due date, commencing on the first due date after the expiry of the 5 years after the guarantee date. Commitment fee of 0.25 payable annually by the DFC on any undrawn amount of the OCR portion only. Therefore, there will be no commitment fee on the special fund, the SFR. from the special fund resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this honorable House being satisfied that this loan to the DFC would contribute to the social and productive sectors of Belize and impact poverty reduction by providing greater access to funding for the key targeted sectors of the economy. One, appears that the DFC may borrow the said sum of $20 million from the DFC from the Caribbean Development Bank on the terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Board of Directors of the DFC to execute and deliver the loan agreement and other associated documents. Two, approves that all principal, interest, fees, premiums, and other charges under the loan shall be tax-free. The loan shall be tax, fee, duty, or charge exempt as provided for in the loan and guarantee agreements. And three, further approves and confirms that the government may enter into a guarantee agreement with the CDB on terms and conditions set out above, and further authorizes the Minister of Finance to execute and deliver the said guarantee agreement and all documents associated therewith. Madam Speaker, if you would allow me, it's important for me to be able to explain a little bit more on what the DFC have been doing, and it's something that I think that we need to highlight as to what has taken place since our government has been managing the DFC. Again, this motion is to seek this honorable House to approve the government guarantee of $20 million. This new line of credit is intended to support the DFC's ongoing lending program. And this is the breakdown that we want to do. For the productive sector, for small businesses, we want to set aside $18 million, Belize dollars. For residential mortgages, $9 million. For education, $9 million. For renewable energy and energy efficiency, $4 million. Madam Speaker, I'm sure that the Minister of Education will be the first to tell you the tremendous need there is for education assistance to our young people. We have a lot of very intelligent and very young people or students that want to do more, that want to study, and in some instances, well, it's impossible for them to meet it just from their own resources. As a government, we have been providing millions of dollars. I mean, I think the last time we've been asking for, how much have we gotten so far, Minister, in education? So we've been, I think we have been giving educational assistance, as we say, to the tune of millions of dollars, and I think we are asking for even more monies to be able to try to keep up. And we try to help as best as we possibly can. But by doing this now, with this loan, then we can make monies available through the DFC, which will be cheaper, and we'll be able to, the students will have a longer term period to be able to pay it back, as opposed to going strictly to a commercial bank. So we are setting aside $9 million out of this monies, of these $40 million for our young people. This line of credit for CDB really is a testament to the, what you call the transformation that has been taking place at DFC, and the recognition that the DFC is receiving from the multilateral institutions. The work of the DFC now is being recognized not only in Belize, but also internationally. And despite a challenging environment marked by high global inflation, sustaining high interest rates in international markets, and its consequential squeeze on the corporation's interest margins, over the past 4 years, DFC has achieved a marked increase in its portfolio growth and improved its portfolio quality. This has helped to offset the adverse impact of the increase in cost of funds, and has resulted in DFC recording a profit for 2 consecutive years in 2022 and 2023. All along these years, because of the lack of proper attention to the DFC have been losing money, and now we have been making sure that we can keep this as a profitable entity to be able to continue to provide support for for development of this country. Because then, if they continue then to with these failures, and I'll point out point out shortly, Madam Speaker, then it will be required the taxpayers to be bailing out DFC, and so it's something that we want to avoid. And so, I'm also happy to point out that in 2024, the way things are looking, this will be a third year of consecutive profits at the DFC. And those profits, remember, we plow it right back to be able to lend to our people. The DFC's significant development in recent years have been underpinned by a significant increase in demand for its loan products and services, with over $120 million disbursed into Belize's economy under this administration. We have loaned $120 million to the DFC over these past 4 years. The portfolio quality is at its best ever, with non-performing loan percentage being reduced, listen to this, from 26% at the end of 2020. 26% of the loans made by the DFC coming up to 2020, they were non-performing. Now, since we have taken over the DFC and making sure that we can manage it properly and work with our with their customers and with their clients, that has gone down from 26% in 2020 to 9% as of September 2024. This shows that the record portfolio growth at the DFC is being done prudently. We just not lend out money like crazy, but we sit they sit with their clients and we work with them and assist them to ensure that they succeed, because when their client succeeds and the DFC succeeds, and Belize succeeds. So we must give credit to Mr. Anderson, who is the new CEO, and his team for doing this stellar work over these past 4 years. Under this administration, the DFC has intensified its marketing efforts and enhanced the visibility of its loan products and value proposition, leading to a heightened demand across sectors, especially within the productive sector. For example, the DFC has provided valuable and timely financial support that has helped to strengthen the following key sectors. 1, banana. Through support of the Banana Growers Association, DFC provided much needed financial support to enable successful rebound, contributing positively to foreign exchange earnings and job creation. According to the Statistical Institute of Belize, banana export rose by nearly 50%, or 18.3 million during the first 8 months of 2024. 2, cattle. DFC's financing to large and small producers has facilitated and allowed for the expansion of the cattle export to Mexico and Guatemala, which has resulted in a marked increase in price. The price of cattle has more than doubled from 2021 to now, all because DFC financing the export of cattle to Mexico while providing financing to small, medium, and large farmers to improve cattle production in a climate-smart way. I must record my appreciation to the Mexican government that has opened up the cattle market. Because of the competition, now we, our farmers, are getting a way better price. I can tell you for the record, in 2006, 2007, at that time, the cattle was being sold approximately like 60 cents Belize on the hoof, meaning live. Today, you're getting as much as $2.50 and as much as $3 on the foot because of the competition. So it is important for us to be able to keep the Mexican market open, and that way then our farmers benefit. And to make the point, Madam Speaker, there's, according to Minister of Agriculture, the Minister of Agriculture pointed out, and this is what I reported to former President Lopez Obrador in Mexico, that there's a little over 5,000 cattle ranchers. And of those more than 80% only produce 50 heads. So in effect, these 80% of our cattle ranchers or farmers are small ones, and they now are benefiting because of the work that this government has been doing by opening up the market, making funding available, and so today these small farmers are really making more and more money by selling cattle both to Mexico and to Guatemala. 3, shrimp. DFC's financing and support for the leading producer in the industry has proven key to the revitalization and future prospect of the industry. The EMS is no longer a problem, or the early mortality syndrome is no longer a problem with the new technology financed by the DFC, and the industry is scaling up its production. 4, artisanal fishing. In collaboration with the World Wildlife Fund, WWF, DFC redesigned its fishing products aimed at financing fisher folks. Since the launch of this project in February of 2024, DFC has approved some $2 million in loans to over 320 fisher folks across Belize. In the past, most of these fisher folks were accessing loans from loan sharks and fast loan entities that were charging interest in excess of 25%. In 2023, DFC won its first international award from the Association of Latin America and Caribbean Development Banks, ALIDE, for an innovative product. And the product's name is We Empowered Business Loans, geared towards women of any age and young men. This product is empowering Belizean entrepreneurs to establish and grow their businesses. Over the past year, DFC has made great strides in improving its digital footprint, aimed at enhancing operational efficiency and client service. In 2024, the current process of implementing a new core management system built with no-code quantum computing technology, complete with artificial intelligence and machine learning, and upgrading its current accounting system should be completed. Madam Speaker, DFC is being transformed to a full-fledged development finance institution. At the same time, it is becoming a more technology-first organization. They recognize that to best support their clients, especially the productive sector, that they need to use technology to be able to help them best. It is also well on its way to achieving the Green Climate Fund accreditation for loans, grants, blended financing, equity, and guarantees. It is poised to become the leading climate finance institution in Belize. The government of Belize fully recognizes the operating and financial achievements of DFC over the past 4 years and is confident that this new line of credit for the CDB will greatly assist the DFC in fulfilling its developmental mandate and further contribute to economic growth and prosperity. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition Member for Mesopotamia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Pleasant good morning, Madam Speaker. Pleasant good morning to all of my colleagues. Welcome to our guests from the National Women's Commission and our youth parliamentarian, as well as the wonderful people in Mesopotamia and all of the 31 constituencies. Madam Speaker, hearing the Prime Minister from a PUP government talk about the DFC is like Lucifer telling us the criteria to become an angel, Madam Speaker. The DFC, I quote Evan Exhide's Amandala when they had the commission of inquiry under former Prime Minister Said Musa, and Brother Hyde's quote was the felons that stole hundreds of millions of dollars from the DFC under a PUP government, the Musa Briceño government, Madam Speaker. So while the opposition supports capitalization of the DFC, Madam Speaker, while the opposition would look forward to the capital injection in these sectors, we have great reservations when it comes to the People's United Party and the DFC. You know, could be why we don't have an Auditor General, could be why we've had an Auditor General office not functioning. I'll get to that on the next motion, Madam Speaker. But this government is not to be trusted, Madam Speaker. When you go now to the capitalization, Madam Speaker, they mentioned education. Madam Speaker, for the last 4 years, I have come into this honorable house and I have lamented as to the challenges that Belizeans are facing, in particular when it comes to education, Madam Speaker. So the Prime Minister talks about $9 million that would be made available in this loan to the DFC, Madam Speaker. However, who will qualify for the $9 million, Madam Speaker? The people that need education assistance, the students that need educational assistance, Madam Speaker, they do not have any land for collateral. Their parents cannot co-sign for the facility, Madam Speaker, and I've told the Minister of Education about this in this honorable house, politely, over and repeatedly. There needs to be adjustments. This money is being borrowed not on behalf of the Briceño enterprise, the Jaime Briceño or Haitham Diab enterprise. It's being borrowed on behalf of the Belizean people. So the Belizean people, Madam Speaker, that need the education assistance desperately do not have the access. I could tell you about a young person that was studying in UWI, and she came to get educational assistance. The Ministry of Education, through the Office of Mesopotamia, assisted her, but she still needed more assistance, Madam Speaker. And I said, well, why don't you go to the DFC? She said, but I don't have any collateral, Mr. Barrow. My mom and my dad already signed for my brother, and I'm on my own. So, I urge the government to address these challenges of the Belizean people whom have to pay this loan back. Education is the single greatest asset that we have as Belizeans in this country. Once we are educated, once we are trained and equipped with a skill set, then we can do for ourselves and we can grow the economy, Madam Speaker. But when you talk about the $9 million, who is the $9 million accessible to? Yes, all of you in here, you would never know what it is to have to get a loan. You would never know what it is to be in dire straits, Madam Speaker. Most of you, if you say, Madam from Belize Rural Central, that is questionable. But, Madam Speaker, most of us in this honorable house, Madam Speaker, would not appreciate what day-to-day Belizeans are going through. So don't come into the house and borrow this $40 million on behalf of the Belizean people, yet the current structure to get these facilities is not suitable to the people that most need it. A young student from a poor household might have a single parent. Sometimes even if they have both parents that are working, they are simply not making enough to be able to repay these loans, to be able to qualify, because when you go to the DFC, it's almost like a commercial bank. Whereas if you cannot show the ability to repay the facility, they will not give it to you. So in particular with our students, I had asked this government repeatedly to look at making sure that a student debt scheme is put in place so that students would not have to pay anything until after they graduate. Saying that, oh, well, you know, paying the interest, pay something, they have nothing to pay. And if we are genuine, if we are sincere in empowering our population, in empowering the next generation, then we will make it accessible. Right now, it is not accessible for the people that need it most. If you don't have land, if you don't have some type of collateral, and where are these poor people going to get the collateral? Where are the parents going to get the ability to demonstrate repayment? They simply don't have it. So in particular, when it comes to the $9 million for students, please, I urge you, adjust the current requisite to qualify for the DFC loans and adjust the repayment for students in particular. It should be if you can demonstrate that your parents make under a certain amount. If you can demonstrate that your parents make nothing. If you can demonstrate as a student that you are indigent, but you just want to better yourself, then the DFC should make this money available, Madam Speaker. Because if not, I, along with my colleagues in the opposition, we are fearful that all we see, monies keep being borrowed for the DFC, and we will end up, when accountability does arise, to see that it was nothing but corruption, it was nothing but the cronies that don't really need the DFC loans getting the loans, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I recognize the member for Colette.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a former Minister of Education, I want to begin where the Leader of the Opposition left off. The loans that are made available to students really ought to be under the softest terms possible, and I get the impression that is what the DFC is aiming for. I think he makes some valid points in terms of the wider policies of the Ministry of Education and the government in terms of helping those who are indigent and who need that kind of assistance. But I'm not sure that the DFC is necessarily the place to do that kind of thing. These are monies that are borrowed and must be repaid. And there must be something in place. In fact, while you look at the history of the DFC, you will see that there were many defaults, and most of them were not for education purposes. I am sure that when students borrow money for education purposes and they come from indigent homes, a large issue would be how to repay that. And so the way I see it is that the DFC has a very important role to play to complement all the other efforts of the government to try to provide a good opportunity for students who are indigent and those who are struggling. You know, a major issue is that even people who we believe can afford to pay for education sometimes can't afford it. You may see a family with two parents who are working. You might see a family with, even if they have some kind of land or they own their own homes, they are struggling. You don't know what's happening in that family. Sometimes there might be a case of somebody very sick, having spent tens of thousands of dollars on getting somebody well again. All of these things matter. And I will say that certainly in the 13 years of the UDP administration, the administration aimed at trying to make sure that all students, but especially students studying at home, get the opportunity to get grants and so on from the Ministry of Education. And if I am to be fair today, I still see that happening under the Ministry of Education, currently under the People's United Party. But, so, long story short, Madam Speaker, we support, I think, the efforts of the administration are good in terms of this loan motion to borrow money from the Caribbean Development Bank for the DFC. That's the way things are set up. But where the thing has gone a little bit sour in my mind is when the Prime Minister insists on using these things that are sort of run of the mill. It is, you know, the DFC borrows money from the Caribbean Development Bank to lend to people to do various things, and they can't pull what they will lend people from out of the sky. They will have to justify, and those have to be in certain categories of lending. But where the Prime Minister goes wrong is trying to give credit to the PUP administration, who everybody under the sun understands bankrupt the DFC, ran it into the ground in the early 2000s, and made a complete mess. He gives zero credit for the real administration that rescued the DFC, because if you listen to him now, you would believe that it was the People's United Party's administration that rescued the DFC. Absolutely not. It was the administration of the UDP led by Dean Barrow that rescued the DFC and put it on proper footing, gave the social partners some say in what was going to go on. But since they forget, let me remind them. You remember these names? Intelco. You remember David Novello? You remember one, James John Mohammed? You remember him? You remember Caribbean, Western Caribbean Properties? You remember Arnaldo Pape Peña? These were people who you gave pretty much unsecured loans to when you were the government back in the early 2000s, the mid 2000s. Remember the DFC defaulting to Social Security in the tune of $38 million? So please, man, save us the drama. Separate all of this nonsense about the good stewardship of the People's United Party. You have absolutely no choice, because the way that the DFC has now been structured under the UDP administration, it leaves no room for the kind of hanky-panky that the PUP is known to do. And so we absolutely stand with you today with these very noble causes, reasons for the DFC to borrow from the DFC. But we remind the Belizean people, and this comes from you, sir, because if you did not touch it, we would have left it alone. But you can't give credit to yourself and your administration when you know you, especially Prime Minister, were a part of the very same administration that bankrupted the DFC, ran it in the ground. In fact, the UDP had to turn all kinds of stones. Nobody wanted to invest again in the DFC. These multilateral agencies, in fact, when you left office in 2008, basically rejoiced, getting rid of all the crookedness that happened under your administration. So please, and this is what hinders us from working together, you know. We could have come here today and had a nice meeting, and we could have supported quite easily this motion, but it is when you are trying to cast aspersions. You talk about when you took over, how many loans were not performing and all of that, as if it were the UDP who caused that to happen. Nothing to the tune of what you did, sir, and your administration did back in the early 2000s to mid 2000s for the DFC. You killed the DFC, dead. And it was the UDP administration, I remind you, that resurrected it and put in place, more importantly, the kind of measures that will now see you, sir, have to move in the right direction. And so we support the motion for this loan. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Freetown.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just briefly, Madam Speaker, I rise to support this motion. I think it's a very, very good injection of capital into the Development Finance Corporation. As the Prime Minister highlighted, it's really targeted at priority sectors. And if you look at all of the sectors, it's unfortunate that they didn't highlight the other important sectors as well. Critically important, I believe, for the economic development of Belize, the national development of Belize. When you talk about credit to medium and small enterprises, vital. That is the foundation of the Belizean economy. More than, Prime Minister can correct me, but I think it's more than 80% of our businesses are classified as MSMEs, right? So that's the foundation of the Belizean economy. That's where innovation is taking place, creativity. That's where job creation is taking place as well. So, an important, in fact, I think the Prime Minister said $18 million will be targeted in that area, I believe. Vitally important, vitally important. So I certainly want to strongly endorse that and support that. So many young people, so many creative people, so many women are in that sector and will benefit significantly from these resources being made available. And the point, because we discussed this at length in Cabinet, the point that is being made about the DFC, absolutely, yes, valid, legitimate points. But the DFC is absolutely aware of these issues. And they are working, as the Prime Minister rightly pointed out, they work with their clients. They work with these targeted groups to try to address any concerns that they have, any issues. How can we, that's the entire spirit in which they operate. How can we work with you to make it easier for you to access this credit? The DFC has no interest in just having money on their books there. They want that money to be borrowed. And they're looking for ways to ensure that people who need the funds, who will use those funds effectively, get access to those funds. So the MSME is a critically important component of this. The other area, of course, is, again, low-income housing, another critically important priority for this government. You know, the Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing has been doing tremendous work of making available low-income housing for people. But obviously, this is not something that the ministry, the government alone can do. So we have to find additional resources and make additional resources available to people. Again, a targeted group of people. And again, there the DFC is working in creative ways to ensure that the terms and conditions of these loans make them accessible to the people who need them. So absolutely, they are aware of that. And the government policies complement the work that they are doing to make sure that the right people who need these monies are getting them. So again, very, very important, good priority. Energy efficiency and renewable energy, again, that's a priority. We're talking a lot about that. That has been a central feature of this government's work, our policies over the past 4 years. Sustainable development, renewable energy. So again, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Again, it's not just about talking about these policies. It's about putting money in place so that people can access that money. We can't just tell people, oh, we want you to do this with solar energy and this and that, and we don't have resources available for them to do it. So again, there, critically important priority. And finally, Madam Speaker, the student loans. Again, there, you know, I certainly associate myself with the remarks of the former Minister of Education, the member for Collett. He knows very well that the Ministry of Education, that's work we do every single day in terms of trying to ensure that the most needy students in our communities, needy families, that they have access to resources so that they can provide an education to their children. That's work we have been doing. This government has spent unprecedented resources on education, right? And it's been over not just our administration, under the UDP, again, they built on what we had done and increased resources and support. And we are building on what we found in 2020, expanding. And that's the way it should be when it comes to education. So unprecedented resources, Madam Speaker. We established for the first time under this government, the Rural Education Grant Fund, targeted specifically at rural families. All the representatives here who represent rural communities can tell you about the benefit that that has brought to rural communities and families and students who don't have no access. They can't go to DFC for sure. So that is the type of programs and initiatives that we have to put in place to complement what DFC is doing. DFC has a particular target, clientele, that sort of thing. And yes, we have to make the terms and conditions easier for people access. Prime Minister can tell you, my colleagues in cabinet can tell you, we just had a discussion about that on Tuesday. But how can we make the interest rate even lower? How can we make the terms and conditions even easier so that people can access? So we are in agreement on that issue. So again, in terms of the work that we do, and the representatives, the member for Collett was fair, and if all of them are fair, they will tell you that under this administration, we have made resources available to the most needy students in each of their constituencies. We do that for all 31 constituencies. So wherever we see young people who want an opportunity to get an education, you know, and there are so many of them, we try to do everything we can to support those young people. But everybody knows that the ministry, the government can't do 100%. We can't provide 100% support for everybody who wants to study. That's just the reality of where we are. So we have to use different vehicles to provide those opportunities, and the DFC represents another one of those options so that people can access education. I borrow from DFC. I borrowed when I was going to my first degree in economics. I borrowed, I think, like $12,000 from DFC, and I had to pay it back with the help of my parents, and so we paid back. So DFC serves a very, very good and useful purpose. And I'm very, very happy that under this motion, loan motion, we're going to provide, I think, $9 million to the DFC for education. So, Madam Speaker, you know, that is where we are. In terms of the overall picture of, let me close with this by saying that, you know, the Prime Minister is absolutely right to speak with pride about the work and record of this government when it comes to DFC. And he's right to point out there's absolutely, he's not beating his chest. He's making a factual point about the fact that when we came into office, the non-performing loans at the DFC stood at about 26%. Any banker will tell you that that is bordering on the verge of a failed institution. It shouldn't be anywhere close to 30% or so. Nothing like that. So, yes, we asked the UDP administration put in place certain things that I think were very good to help to ensure the sustainability of the DFC. All we learn from each other. We learn from each other's mistakes. That's the way it should be. And so they did some good things. Brought in social partners. All of those things are important. But that does not take away from the fact that under this administration over the past 4 years, the people who we put in place to run and administer the DFC, that non-performing percentage has gone from 26 to 9%. That is something we should all applaud and be proud of. So, so we have a proud 4-year record, Madam Speaker, and it is absolutely right for us to highlight that for the Belizean people so that they can have confidence in the Development Finance Corporation. We shouldn't run down the DFC and try to create this people's minds out there, oh, they can't go there, they shouldn't go there. Man, we should encourage our people to use these institutions that are there to benefit them. So we are proud of that, Madam Speaker, and I'm proud to support this motion.
Oh, sorry.
I recognize the member for Curzon North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I will be short, and I will not get into the back and forth about what transpired in the DFC in the past, Madam Speaker. My only concern is precisely what has been aired. And why do I want to bring this up, Madam Speaker? Because I represent a constituency that in its majority is rural, centralized, and one of the major needs, and I think the Prime Minister attested to the fact today that there is an increased need on what has to do with financing for education. And by the way, Prime Minister, one of the ways in which you can address these needs is bringing down the cost of living in this country. That apart, I think that when it comes to making financing available for educational purposes, there has to be a strike and a delicate balance between the criteria that TFC puts in place versus the compliance that needs to be in place to make sure that whatever monies are borrowed, that those are repaid back. And so I think that going forward, and when making the kinds of criteria to make these loans available, that the government as well looks into how best we can make these loans friendly, particularly to those who are socially marginalized. I'm not saying that these people cannot pay, but there are instances where payment, for instance, to meet for one particular month might be difficult for a family. And so those are the kinds of glitches and tweaks that needs to be put in place to make sure that the financing is made available to those who need it the most. That's my contribution. I do support the motion. Thanks.
Recognize the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, I guess when somebody doesn't have anything to say, they get personal. You know, and that puts you nowhere. We are to do the people's work. And former Minister of Education, I was in no way, as what Minister of Education, or the present Minister of Education was saying, trying to play a blind eye as to what has happened in the past. I was talking about what we meant. And if you were to ask the former CEO, Ms. Ewan, who did an excellent job in bringing back the DFC, she said her criticism was that, if you were to allow me, no, please. If you were to allow me, it says, her criticism was that in its effort to try to ensure that, in the effort of the from previous government to try to ensure that, oh, we don't make a mistake, they straitjacket them. And they could not really operate properly as a financial institution. And because they could not make these loans, and it was so onerous to make loans under the DFC during that time because of the very same things that they wanted to avoid from happening, they could not really participate. So a lot of the changes that we have made, the amendments that we made from on the DFC, came from her before she left, because, you know, she left because she got sick. And I recognize the work that she did. The point is that when we came in, we look at the DFC and realize that we now have to make certain adjustments, but at the same time keeping the controls to ensure that the DFC can properly support the people that need most help, which is our small farmers or MSMEs. We're doing special loans for women and for young men, something that has never happened. And you could come here and pontificate, leader of the opposition, and talk about wanting to make more money for education. Where was your mouth when the UDP government blew out $600 million of oil money and $500 million of the Petrocaribbean money? When did I ever hear you call a press conference? Because you love press conference. When did you call the press conference when you're in position and say, I'm calling my father, the Prime Minister, to make monies available for education? You see? But see, that's the point, Honorable Leader of the Opposition. If you come and speak constructively, as the Honorable Member from Colette, then we could have a constructive discussion. And we agreed that there are many things that went wrong back then. You know my position back then. So all I am saying today is let's recognize the work that the DFC is doing right now. And you're talking about how they're supposed to lend. You know what's the interest rate for education right now? When we took over, the interest rate was between 11 and 13% for education. That's what the UDP, the DFC was charging coming to 2020, 11 to 13%. Despite the fact that interest rates have gone up since 2020 internationally, and you are internationally as leader of the opposition, so you should know that interest rates have gone up. We have reduced the interest rates to students. The average interest rates is between 7 and 9%. And in some special instances, they go down to 6.5%. So sometimes, it'd be good if you were to ask questions, and then we could answer you, and then you could analyze, and later you could come back and try, and if you believe that we did wrong. But when you just speak just because you want to be listened, you want to hear yourself, then I'm trying to be nice. But I saw my son anyway, that's Infanto tell Daniel, you need to be good. He say, hard to be good. Sometimes you push women. Let's be constructive. Let's be constructive. Here we are. The point is that DFC has been doing an amazing job right now. And all of us should celebrate it. Because the DFC belongs to all of us. And the point is, if you have an institution that continues to lose money year after year, not in any ways saying that they were misusing the money or whatever. I was not in any way suggesting that. But because it was so difficult to lend monies, and you have in any business, and maybe I need to quote you on this, you have certain expenses, salaries, rent, and so forth have to be paid every day. And so you need to make a certain amount of revenues to be able to pay those expenses. And because of the straitjacket that the DFC was back then, no fault of theirs, that's the hand that was given to them, they could not grow the portfolio. And that's what we have done. We come with a business sense. We understand business. We know what we have to do. And we're bringing the people that were working these same changes that we have today. We already were working with Ms. Ewing because she understood what needed to be done. The problem she had is that her government back then never understood what needed to be done to get this going. And that's the big difference. We understand development, and that is why you're seeing record growth in the economy. And unemployment and reducing the loans at the debt to GDP, look by any metrics. And you could see that this People's United Party government understand development, and development is about people. Madam Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity, and once again, I thank the members of the opposition, despite the fact that, and it's fine that they could criticize. I want to thank them for the support for this motion. Thank you.
Honorable members, that motion is referred to the Finance and Economic Development Committee for examination, consideration, and report. Honorable Prime Minister, before we continue, may we dispense with the Standing Order 12?
Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 12.8, I move that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting at any hour though opposed.
Honorable members, the question is that the proceedings on the order paper may be entered upon and proceeded with at this day's sitting on at any hour, though opposed. All those in favor kindly say aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Economic Development.
Madam Speaker, this is the resolution for the expansion of the protection of Belize's total ocean space and the medium biodiversity protection zone motion 2024. Madam Speaker, I wish you could find a way to make this shorter. I have 3 pages to read of this thing. But I understand there's some, maybe I think we could find a way we could try to reduce it without trying to meet our legal obligations in the National Assembly. But please bear with me. I move whereas as on November 4th, 2021.
One second, Prime Minister. My notes have that they request to take the previous motion.
Oh, yes, sorry. Sorry, Madam Speaker. I seek the indulgence of the Honorable House to have this motion taken through all its stages this day on the Malone motion.
Honourable members, the question is that this motion be taken through all its stages this day. All those in favour kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have it. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was getting ahead of my time. I move whereas on November 4, 2021, the Government of Belize and the Nature Conservancy finalized a debt conversion transaction and signed the Belize Blue Loan Agreement, the BLA, and the Conservation Funding Agreement, the CFA, collectively known as the Belize Blue Bonds for Ocean Conservation. And whereas the BLA and the CFA are contingent on the delivery of 8 primary conservation commitments and targets, and an agreed payment schedule to be realized by the Government of Belize by the 8th anniversary of the agreements. And whereas Clause 1 of the CFA outlines Belize's obligations to complete a legally enforceable Marine Spatial Plan, the MSP, and designate up to 30% of its ocean in biodiversity protection zones, and outlines the 7 legally binding commitments to be achieved through the delivery of the MSP. And whereas as of November 4, 2022, the Government of Belize has successfully delivered milestones 1, 2, and 3, and is expected to achieve milestone 4 by November 4th of 2024. And whereas milestone 4 of the CFA states, and I quote, no later than 3 years after signing the agreement, the National Assembly shall approve, and the government shall formally sign into law and gazette biodiversity protection zones, BPZs, covering a total of 25% of our ocean, which is the Caribbean Sea. So nobody gave X, right? And whereas as to date, Belize has legally designated 20.05% or 669,046 hectares or 6,690.46 square kilometers of its total ocean space as biodiversity ocean zones. And whereas to meet the milestone 4 target, a minimum of 165,100 hectares or 4.95% of Belize's ocean space is being proposed to be further designated as medium protection biodiversity zones. And whereas the CFA obliges Belize to protect up to 30% of the total ocean space, as 15% or half of it as high protection biodiversity zone, no take, you know, a lot of fish or anything in that area. And then the other 15%, you have medium protection biodiversity zones for general use. And whereas the proposed 4.95% expansion will be designated as a medium protection biodiversity zones, which are described in Conservation Funding Agreement as zones, quote, zones suitable for some level of extraction and seabed alteration with appropriate management and direction, depending on the objective of each designated area, end of quote. And whereas the Conservation Funding Agreement stipulates that the identification and designation of new biodiversity protection zones within Belize's ocean space is to be guided through a science-based and stakeholder-driven marine spatial planning, the MSP process, which takes into account the ecological, economic, and social considerations considerations within Belize's blue space. And whereas, as per maps attached, these zones were identified through the ongoing National Marine Spatial Planning process and represents areas that, 1, have current and historical support from stakeholders, 2, a strong scientific basis for their biodiversity and ecosystem functionality and connectivity, and benefit to the wider Belize Barrier Reef system, 3, economic significance and importance to people and livelihoods, and 4, complement ongoing management efforts and objectives identified in existing management plans and legislation. And whereas the delivery of Milestone 4 is co-led by the Coastal Zone Management Authority and Institute and the Belize Fisheries Department through targeted stakeholder engagement, employing a transparent, inclusive, and equitable process in accordance to global MSP best practices and Section 1416 of the Fisheries Resources Act number 7 of 2020. And whereas the process spanned 11 months of extensive data collection, analysis, and participatory mapping, and the stakeholder consultation process, including 31 meetings with a total of 497 participants, representing 16 stakeholder groups, including academia, aquaculture and mariculture, coastal development, community-based organizations, donor organizations, fishing industry post-harvesting, fishing industry wild capture, government ministries, government and statutory bodies, international conservation organization, media and communications, MPA co-managers, national conservation organizations, social development organizations, tourism and recreation, and the public. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this Honorable House, being satisfied of the need for Belize's obligations to complete a legally enforceable Marine Spatial Plan, the MSP, and designate up to 30% of its ocean in biodiversity protection zones, approve the expansion of the protection of Belize's total ocean space and the designation of its medium biodiversity protection zones, covering a total of 25% of its ocean. This motion has a recommendation of the Cabinet. Madam Speaker, I have a number of pages explaining, but it's pretty much what I've read, and I've listened. If anybody have questions, then I could probably refer to my notes to clarify any concerns or that they may have. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Mesopotamia.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Yes, Madam Speaker. Listen, Prime Minister, what you have to understand, I am not here to be your friend, but I'm not here to be churlish, not here to quarrel with any of you, here to advocate on behalf of the Belizean people. And you are not perfect. This is not one of those regimes where there's absolute power. There is the opposition here to criticize and hold you accountable. So on that note, one of the concerns I would like to bring to you is from the fishermen. They feel that all of this conservation is hurting them. So the more and more you conserve, the less they are able to earn a living. And it is a legitimate concern that has been expressed by my colleagues, the standard bearers, from the different constituencies that have an abundance of fishermen. So it's something to look into. We support conservation, but we also support our fishermen earning a living to be able to take care of their families. So please bear that in mind. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Pickstock.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. I rise to support this motion. It's on. Morning, colleagues. Morning, everybody. Morning, Belize. Morning, good people of Pickstock again. Madam Speaker, I'll preface what I am going to say in support of this motion by stating that small countries like Belize have been given a raw deal by the developed nation, and that they can do a lot more in supporting small countries like Belize and small island developing nations who are at threat of climate change and what we're seeing all around us. so they can do a lot more. We are doing our part in this country. We're doing our part in this region. Latin America holds about 50% of the world's biodiversity, and it is important for us to continue to preserve our natural resources. Madam Speaker, the Blue Bond Initiative has helped us both from a preservation standpoint and from a financial and economic standpoint. It helped us to restructure the ugly super bond that was a shackle around our necks for many, many years. And it is also being utilized to help preserve more of our marine spaces. Madam Speaker, the marine resources provide at least 50% or over 50% of our GDP. 80% of the people who come to Belize come for marine-based activities. And so designating more areas as protected areas and preserving the resources that are in there is crucial to the preservation for future generations. Some people know about Belize. Some people know about the Blue Hole and don't know where it is. We have the second largest barrier reef in the world, a World Heritage Site. All these things deserve to be protected even more. And so it is important that we continue to take initiatives like this one and all initiatives that fall under this agreement to ensure that we have preservation for our livelihoods and for people who want to experience Belize. So I support this motion, Madam Speaker, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support this motion for the conservation of the 30% of Belize's ocean space. Mr. Speaker, Belize has international commitments, it is true, but we also have commitments domestically to support our people. And this expansion of 5% is in medium biodiversity protection. And which means to say, rather than protection, it's basically conservation, because it affords, through the medium biodiversity designation, for fisher folks to be able to fish in those areas and to do other types of extraction comparable to the high biodiversity protection, which is no take and has no extraction. But even when we look at it, maybe in the short term, as the leader of opposition mentioned, there might be some fear that there is no livelihood coming to those fisher folks. But when you look at it at the medium and long term, when there's no take, for example, and when in the next 5, 8, 10 years there's a vast multiplication of fish and other marine species, then these people will be able to fish, because the fish and other species will come out of that high biodiversity area, come out even into the medium and outside into the low biodiversity areas where they can be doing their fishing. What we will have to do, possibly though, will be to have increased cooperation with the people who do the co-management of these areas, increased cooperation with the with our marine protected force, especially the Coast Guard, because there will be fish coming out of those areas going maybe down south, where maybe we can have incursions from neighboring states doing transboundary incursions, and that would be possibly something that we'll have to look at. But that's another area. So, Mr. Speaker, I once again support this motion for the increase of 30% protection area.
I recognize the member from Orange Walk East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to, as well, offer my strong support to the motion being laid today to expand Belize's biodiversity protection zones. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important initiative. We believe that it not only reflects a commitment by the country to preserving our nation's rich marine ecosystems, but also a strategic move towards sustainable development. And so by designating up to 30% of our ocean space for high protection and the additional 15% for medium protection, we are safeguarding invaluable marine resources for our future generations. So I just wanted to add my voice to this motion and ask other members to support this very vital motion today. Thank you very much.
I recognize a member from Stan Creek. Yes.
Represent a lot of fishers, especially in the marine environment, and many times they have concerns about development happening. I believe this motion will make a positive impact on the entire country, I believe, so I support it 100%.
We have one more. I recognize the member for Albert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to reiterate the point, if I may, about the kind of consultation that is not happening as it relates to the designation, the further designation of these zones. Like the member from Stan Creek West, in the Albert constituency, we have fisher folk in the Conchel Bay community, and they have been completely locked out, if you will, in the communication, in the consultation processes. And so I would like to urge the minister responsible to kindly take a look at that when it relates to looking at expanding areas for conservation. Because indeed, the fisher folk in Albert are concerned about how this continues to impact their livelihoods. We support conservation, and we certainly support being free from the shackles of the bond that the member from Pickstock referred to. Let us not forget how we were shackled in the first place, and let us not run the risk of marginalizing our fisher folk because we are now trying to correct a wrong that was done to the Belizean people. Madam Speaker, I place on record my support for this motion, but ask to ensure that those who matter, those who make their livelihoods from these areas, the fisher folk and the tour guides and the tour operators, are taken into account. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I see that really there is support for this, but the whole issue about our fisher folks and how is it that we can protect them. Well, I just want to make a point. I will speak with the people at the Blue Bond office, member from Albert, and I'm welcoming. I'm encouraging you to speak with Ms. Wade, who have extensive experience in this. And if there's an issue, probably these fisher folks were consulted, but maybe one of them, the one that you spoke about, did not go or did not know. You know, that always happens. But it's good though. But the most important point, and I think, Minister of Sustainable Development spoke to it. When we first did a no-take zone, it was down south in the Port of Honduras area. And I remember then the area representative, late Honorable Mike Espat, vehemently opposed it. Said, no, we need to go fish, and we have all these people fishing and everything. But the truth of the matter is that if we don't have some sort of conservation, we are going to fish out everything. When you go to Barbados right now in their waters, everybody tell you hardly see any marine life. Jamaica, all of them, they've gone we have the opportunity to be able to put in place, Madam Speaker, certain areas that we can protect, and rightly so, that once the fish and the rest of the marine life and the crab and the conchs and them, they grow and become in bigger numbers, they go out of that zone. And so then you could be able to get more products or produce over a longer period. I was in the Global Reef area. I was and with one of the tour guides, or they were driving. But I was out there with my family, and what filled me with hope is that what you were saying in the Global Reef, there's a no protection, also a no-take zone. He said, you know what? He said, we look after this, So whenever we see one boat, when other boat not supposed to go here, we call Fisheries Department and say, hey, there's a boat in here, you need to come and check. He said, you know why? He told me, Prime Minister, he said, because now here, because of that now, outside of this zone, he said, we catch bigger lobster, more fish, and then we could go and sell it to the resorts around here. So we need to protect it, and then when they come out of that zone, then we could get it. I see this to make the point that we also need to educate our fisher folks. And I know many of them, like I always said, the biggest challenge to the environment is poverty. Because you can't wait for a whole month or 1 week to bring bread on the table. You need to bring it every day. And so I understand these small fisher folks. And under the Blue Bond, we are making funding available for them. We are working with them in training them so that they could also do artisanal fishing. They could do the catch and reliefs, and fly fishing. The people in the fly fishing, they make a lot more money, lot more than what a fisher folk, they do. So we need to work with them. And we need to encourage them to show them why it's important what we're doing. But there has been a lot of consultations, as the office pointed out to me, that they consulted with over 497 stakeholders from 16 stakeholder groups, from academia, aquaculture, fisher folks, the industry, a whole gamut of people that were consulted. So that's it. Madam Speaker, I want to thank everyone for their contribution, and also thank from everybody for the support of this very important work. Thank you.
Honourable members, that motion is referred to the Natural Resources and Environment Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, this is the resolution recommending the appointment of a person to act as the Auditor General, motion 2024. I move whereas Section 109(2) of the Belize Constitution provides that if after the 15th day of January of 2002, the office of the Auditor General is vacant, or if the holder of that office is for any reason unable to exercise the functions of his office or her office, the Governor General, acting on the recommendation of both houses of the National Assembly contained in resolutions passed in that behalf, may appoint a person to act as Auditor General. And whereas the office of the Auditor General has been vacant since 1st September 2024, now therefore be it resolved that this Honorable House recommends that Ms. Maria Rodriguez be appointed to act as Auditor General for a period of 4 months, with effect from the first day of September 2024. Madam Speaker, this is a very straightforward resolution, and as we all are aware that the Auditor General, previous one, was already retired, and we had to bring her back in, and her time again has come to an end, and so we need to be able to appoint another one. And as the resolution states, it said the Governor General acting on recommendation for both houses. We need both houses to be able to help us for this one. I want to be clear, Madam Speaker, that the notice went out for a qualified person to fill the post of the Auditor General, and we hope that this process will be concluded by the end of the year. Again, I know a lot of people get excited about it, but we are trying to do our very best to be able to get a qualified person. Even within the office of the Auditor General, there are challenges as to who best can fit this post. So we believe that the best way to do that is to advertise it, and the people in the office, they also can also apply for that post. It's going to be an open and transparent post. We have no hidden agenda. We want to ensure that we get the right person. We have agreed, and I'm saying it, and I'm sure the opposition will say it, that this is one area that we have to strengthen. We are working with the IMF as it is right now, Madam Speaker, to find ways of how we could strengthen the auditing, the Office of the Auditor General, and also to bring up all our accounts up to date. So it's not something that we are that we deliberately don't want to do. We are working on it. It's a long process, and I know one of the challenges that we always have is that now we're competing with the private sector. If we don't have an adequate person, and I'm saying if, at the Auditor General's office, and I've not spoken to anyone in that office, then we have to go outside of that office, even within the government service or the private sector. And then that's where it becomes a little bit more trickier, because in the private sector, you tend to, well, now, especially now with a very tight job market, we'd have to be able to maybe have to increase the salary that's being offered to them, which is ironically one of the suggestions that the NTUCB is now saying, that we may need to offer even a bigger package to get a good Auditor General. So before the leader of the opposition tries to score some political points, I want to make it very clear, there's no hidden agenda. It is only for 4 months. We're advertising the process. You all are going to be kept informed, and we do our very best to find an adequate Auditor General. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the Leader of Opposition, Member for Mesopotamia.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, the Office of the Auditor General is the supreme audit institution of Belize that plays a crucial role in the holding of the government accountable when it comes to the stewardship of our public funds. It is difficult to accept the Prime Minister's presentation that this is not deliberate, Madam Speaker. It has been 4 years. Prime Minister lamented back in 2021 when Dorothy Bradley retired, and he was forced to reappoint her in 2022. Where is the plan for succession, Madam Speaker? And you may be instinctively tempted to say, well, it's incompetence. I would not say so. I believe it is deliberate, Madam Speaker. If you have a dysfunctional Office of the Auditor General, guess what happens? There's no accountability. There's no accountability for a government that is spending billions and billions of dollars. There is no transparency. There is no good governance. And I am an outsider. I'm not a career politician. You said that, you know, where was I when Prime Minister Barrow was there? I was selling millions of records, little man. Take it easy, Chihuahua. I was selling millions of records.
No, you
that.
need to withdraw that.
I retract that, Madam Speaker. I would hope that you would ask the member from Kayo South to retract some of the statements he makes about me too, Madam Speaker.
Made the statement, just withdraw it. Thank you.
I withdraw it, Madam Speaker. But I was selling millions of records in the United States, being a successful artist, creative sector. You guys say you're big on the creative sector. I know there's a motion here dealing with the National Institute of History and Culture. So not try to belittle the creative sector. Be careful. Anyway, the point that I'm making, Madam Speaker, you know, I come from the outside, and the stigma for politicians when you're growing up and in regular society today is that they're dishonest, they're dubious, they're duplicitous. They have lyrics, They know how to talk you and sweet mouth you, but when it comes to the actions and the deliverables, we don't see it. So for the last 4 years, you have been telling us how important the Office of the Auditor General is, and you're trying to find a suitable replacement, but you have done nothing to do that. You mentioned that it is competitive if we go outside of the public sector. The PSU president and other members of the Public Service Union that I have been in touch with, they claim that that would be a colossal mistake, Madam Speaker. But when you look at the salary of the Auditor General, you talk about wanting a suitable candidate, but you're not offering suitable terms. $50,000 to go up against prime ministers and government ministers and special interests who are benefiting from the fleecing of the public coffers, not casting any aspersions to this government, but in general, Madam Speaker. This is a serious position, Madam Speaker, and as I said, we hear the same speech every time the Auditor General question comes up, but we never see any follow-through and any action. One of the things that the Prime Minister needs to do is to raise the salary. I agree with members of the Public Service Union that $50,000 is a paltry sum for such an important office that is protecting the people from malfeasance, protecting the people from not having the adequate resources for the things that they need most if the government is engaged, Madam Speaker, in corruption. You know, and when you look at the replacement, I don't want to attack anybody personally, but there have been many criticisms. There have been many criticisms from people inside the office of the Auditor General as to the previous Auditor General, that she was toxic and created a hostile work environment. And this has been persistent criticism, and they say that Ms. Rodriguez, who sued you, I think she took you to court for defamation for saying that she was not independent, public service minister. But, Madam Speaker, there have been complaints.
Madam Speaker.
On a point of order.
Point of order, I mean, that is an outright dishonest statement. There was no lawsuit against the Ministry of Public Service. I mean, please, you need to retract that statement, member.
I did not say the ministry, I said you. I know she wrote you a letter or something.
Neither, Madam Speaker. There was no lawsuit or letter or anything like that.
You need to be factual. So kindly retract that statement.
Well, that is based on information from the Public Service Union, so I would have to clarify, and if it is not factual, then I could withdraw it at the next sitting.
No, but if you don't know it to be factual, you shouldn't even bring it to the House.
No, but
That's
I have reliable sources. I'm not going to give my sources.
Sources doesn't enter into the National Assembly. Just retract the statement.
No, Madam Speaker,
if you don't, the statement is being withdrawn. Thank you. Continue.
Yes. Thank you. Anyway, as I was saying, the Office of the Auditor General has been deliberately left to be dysfunctional so that there is no oversight in this country with all of the monies that are being spent. And now, as we make the transition to, hopefully, a permanent, suitable Auditor General that will give us an audit report. We have not had an audit report since 2014, which is absolutely unacceptable. And this government talks about building and expanding on the foundations of the previous government where it was doing good and where maybe it was not performing at the highest level. They promised to do far better and to reverse the disastrous course of action. And we have not seen that. We have not seen one audit from the Office of the Auditor General since this government has taken office, Madam Speaker. And as I said, there were many other replacements as far as in the interim that could have been had. But I am telling you, the reports, again, coming out of the Public Service Union, is that the appointment that is being made now will do nothing to bring harmony or to bring some type of calm to the office, but it will continue in the direction that has been vehemently complained about. But as I said, Madam Speaker, I believe this is all deliberate. We will come to the end of this 4-month term, and it will probably be extended. It will probably result in the Honorable Prime Minister making the current appointee permanent, Madam Speaker, because they have no interest in increasing the salary. I would hope that they would prove us wrong on this side, Madam Speaker, by making the salary and the benefits of that office that come with great sacrifice and great risk, that they would show us exactly how serious they are about this very, very important office, Madam Speaker. And I do believe, Madam Speaker, that there comes a time where Plan Belize has to be demonstrated. We have not seen any of the deliverables for Plan Belize, Madam Speaker, and transparency, good governance, and accountability is what this government promised. In fact, the member from Fort George brought a motion to this House with the affirmation theme, Madam Speaker, and you would think the office of the Auditor General would be the primary focus of this government as far as strengthening this office, as far as ensuring that this office has a suitable person overseeing the office in order to ensure that the IMF compliance that the Prime Minister speaks about happens, Madam Speaker. But for the last 4 years, we have seen this office brought to a screeching halt with nothing being done to hold this government accountable. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Before I call on member for Albert, I just want to take a moment to remind members of Standing Order 38.4, which asks that we do not use offensive or insulting language, and 38.6, that when you refer to another member of the House, you refer to them by the electoral area, not by any other name, not by Miss, not by Mr., simply by the electoral area. If we practice that, we would avoid having to apologize or retract. So I ask that we adhere to that. It seems like it will be a long day, and so I do ask that we respect the standing orders. Member for Albert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to first acknowledge, indeed, that the position of Auditor General is one of paramount importance in terms of providing the kind of oversight that is required on the use of public funds. I also want to acknowledge, though, the work of the Joint Public Accounts Committee, Madam Speaker, who has had 14 meetings that has looked critically at the Office of the Auditor General, the Office of the Accountant General, and the work of the committee itself as it relates to its seemingly or symbiotic relationship for that oversight mechanism. I want to acknowledge, Madam Speaker, that the Minister of Finance, the member for Orange Walk Central, and our Prime Minister had agreed to meet with the Joint Public Accounts Committee and sat with us, Madam Speaker, to go over the concerns that we have had in terms of what we perceive, and I say we, members, all members of the committee, as to a failure, a systematic failure of the oversight mechanism. In my recollection, Madam Speaker, it was the first time the Minister of Finance was asked to come to the committee meeting and attended the committee meeting. And I would be remiss, member for Orange Walk Central, not to acknowledge the important function that served in terms of highlighting to government what were some concerns of the committee, including the fact that there were 49 management reports on record that has not been addressed by the Auditor General, and a number of financial reports that simply has not been filed. The Auditor General, the outgoing Auditor General, had clearly outlined for the committee what were some of the weaknesses in the system. However, seemed to have failed in her attempt to get the support from her staff in terms of addressing some of the low-lying fruits of this oversight mechanism. The need for succession planning, Madam Speaker, was a critical matter that was raised by the membership of JPAC and was discussed with the Auditor General, the outgoing Auditor General. And we feel very strongly that as we seek to fill that position, that members of JPAC who have that particular expertise should be included in that recruitment exercise. The Auditor General was tasked, Madam Speaker, with putting together a plan of action to ensure that the kind of in-house training be addressed for that type of succession planning we speak about. The Auditor General, Madam Speaker, was also tasked with following up with the Attorney General's ministry to look at the legislative framework that will allow that office more autonomy in doing its work and function. And so, Madam Speaker, I stand to say, having been intimately involved in the processes, having had an opportunity to share our concerns with the Minister of Finance, the member for Orange Walk Central, having been actively engaged with members on both sides of this House who sit on the Joint Public Accounts Committee and members of the Senate, Madam Speaker, we feel strongly that this requires great urgency in addressing not only the appointment of an Auditor General, but ensuring that the Auditor General continues to fill his or her role in terms of providing the audited reports that would come to us for greater scrutiny. I support the appointment, the temporary appointment of the current Deputy Auditor General, and I hope that it will take far less than 4 months for us to find a suitable replacement. I thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Cayo South.
Morning, Madam Speaker. I listened to the Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, speaking of oversight. And I can't stop but remembering when his father was Prime Minister and we were issuing contracts left, right, and center, and there was no Contractor General for how many years, Prime Minister? Years, not months. And we were after him, and he totally ignored us. It got to the point, Madam Speaker, where the Prime Minister and I had to take the then Prime Minister to court because he was issuing contracts, if I recall correctly, to the nature of $1.5 billion, and he didn't take these contracts to court as is by law to the House. the friendship with the judges got to a point where I think the judge made a verbal judgment and something happened and he flew away and he never wrote those judgments. And I think in the verbal judgment, the leader of the opposition's father was found guilty. That's in the record, Madam Speaker. I have also been involved as the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee when we were in opposition, and there was a report that was supposed to be tabled in the House, and it was a revision we had done from the 2000, if I'm not mistaken, 2005 Auditor General's report. We had done a minority report to the House, not to the House, we had done a minority report to the Public Accounts Committee at the time, and we didn't get the support of the opposition members at the time. We recommended to the new chairman, the honorable member from Albert, that report should have been tabled to the House by now, and I believe it hasn't. So we are still back. The JPAC, sadly, is still where it was, meaning there is no report that has been tabled to the House since 2005. We have not cleared those reports. So all I'm saying is that the opposition, with all due respect, is the only member that can chair the PAC. And I just received papers today that the honorable leader of the opposition has, I want to use a nice word, constructively removed every single member apart from himself and the Honorable Ugo Pat from all committees. So sadly, I will have to see his face more often, it seems, which is not a good thing. It is not a good thing for democracy. We on this side, Madam Speaker, we have done many things when it comes to oversight. I can give you an example of my ministry, for example, where we follow all the protocols, we follow all the procedures. We have done so diligently. We go through the evaluation process. We invite members from other ministries to join the evaluation process. That process is taken to the Ministry of Finance. They give us their no objection. That report therefore goes to the Contractor General, who, if she, at this time it's a her, if she gives us any concerns, we address it, and then and only then is it tabled to the House. So we have followed all the necessary procedures that is required for us to issue contracts. That's, in my opinion, positive oversight. But let's not forget that the Joint Public Accounts Committee, which was proposed by this government, that it included the social partners, which was a milestone, not only for Belize, but for the region, for small nations that have parliamentary systems to have proper oversight. That is a milestone that was established recently. And it is the only committee that is chaired by the opposition member. And so you have your opportunity now, sir. You are now, I don't know who is the chairman. Who is the chairman now? I don't know who to speak to, that's the thing. Who is in charge here? Is it the alliance? Is it the leader from the opposition? It's a difficult time for us in Belize, Madam Speaker. You decide that. I am not really interested in how you do your affairs, but it is a disservice to the people of Belize that we do not have a functioning opposition. And that makes it difficult for us here on the government side, Madam Speaker, because it does not give us an opportunity to proper ventilate the issues. And worse now, when you only have one man, one and a half maybe, that officially represents the opposition in all these committees. So I shouldn't be saying this because I should be happy that there is no opposition, but I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the people of Kaya South and for the people of Belize. to urge the opposition to get their act together so that proper oversight can be done. Thank you very much.
I recognize the member for Fort George.
Good afternoon, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I want to acknowledge the points raised by the member from Albert. The constructive criticism that she gave in terms of the office of the Auditor General and the challenges faced by that office, which I will confirm because the Ministry of Public Service has been working over the past 3+ years with the Office of the Auditor General to deal with some of the human resource challenges, some of the other resource challenges that that office has had. But Madam Speaker, what I cannot acknowledge and countenance today is the continued personal attacks that the leader of the opposition keeps making against career public officers. It seems that every time we come to this honorable house, the leader of the opposition is once again attacking another public officer. And it's true, as he just said earlier, he was away selling millions of records, millions of dollars worth of records, Madam Speaker, which I find interesting that when that student that he spoke about earlier came for help with education, he couldn't provide the help, even though he sold millions and millions of records. He had to ask the Minister of Education for help and then send the student to try to get a loan somewhere else. But that's just how he behaves, Madam Speaker. I need to put on record my gratitude for the work of Ms. Dorothy, the Auditor General, Ms. Dorothy Bradley, who has given her career, her life as a career public officer. She has worked in many offices, not only the Auditor General's office, but she was once working as a Chief Elections Officer, I believe. Is that correct? I think she was there at one point. She was an Accountant General. She worked in other departments, other offices, and she retired, Madam Speaker. It's true that the office is one of critical importance that we all acknowledge. We all know that that is an important office. But if the government had come in today with a resolution, Madam Speaker, to just appoint somebody from within, just promote somebody from within, you would have heard a chorus of criticism coming from the opposition that this post should have been advertised. So the government did the right thing. The post was advertised. Yes, there must be an acting person in the position, and that's why under Section 109(2) of the Constitution, the resolution was brought today for the House to support the acting appointment of Ms. Maria Rodriguez for 4 months. The post has been advertised, and we will see who will apply for this post. The qualifications are there in the vacancy notice, and the salary structure is also there. Now, we need to make a clarification there, Madam Speaker. Whenever a post is advertised in the government, and this particular post is on pay scale 26, it shows you what the first point on that pay scale is. It does not tell you exactly what the salary is for the person that will come in. So yes, the first point on the pay scale may be 50,000 something, but that does not mean that the person that will be coming in as the Auditor General will be making that salary. So that is a definite, they're trying to misinform, the leader of opposition is trying to misinform the public when he makes that statement, because that is how all government vacancies are advertised, to show what pay scale it is on and what is the starting point on that particular pay scale. So, Madam Speaker, again, yes, there are challenges, and that post or that department, that office is a very important one. The government is doing the right thing to advertise the post, and we hope to see very qualified persons applying for that post. But it was important to also come in today to have an acting appointment for the period of 4 months. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member for Orange Walk East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to raise to support the motion that is here today, and also to put on record, Madam Speaker, because I think I owe it to my constituents to say that I do take offense to the nasty remark here that that was expressed by the leader of the opposition. But I also want to, and I want to thank you that he had to withdraw, and I think he needs to apologize, not only withdraw. But let me also say, Madam Speaker, that while he would go on with his nasty remarks, I must say that while he spent his 10 years wherever he was, I have been spending my time serving the people of my tongue and my country. So, Madam Speaker, this resolution, this motion is a very important one, and we do agree with the comments mentioned by other members of the opposition that there is need for accountability, there is need for continued oversight. And so it is very important that we get on with the business and that we support the motion to appoint this Ms. Rodriguez to hold over and act as Auditor General. This government, Madam Speaker, is committed to ensuring that we do the right thing, and by making sure that we have an Auditor General is a part of our commitment to ensuring that there is accountability and transparency in government. Thank you very much.
I recognize the Honorable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. But I will be, again, just very brief. Again, we certainly appreciate constructive discussion and criticism. And so, the Honourable Member from Colette, the way she presented herself, that's what we expect. Albert, the Honourable Member from Albert. And that's what we expect here in this National Assembly. But when you have the leader of the opposition, what he said for about 30 minutes of rambling, could I do it in 5 minutes? I mean, and just being personal, I mean, but when you think about it, Madam Speaker, they just brought this to my attention. Here we have the report on the Committee of Selection on the appointment of members to fill vacancies of the standing committees of the House of Representatives. It seems that we have two parties on the other side. This man, this leader of the opposition, changed all of these people.
Let's not anticipate the motion that's coming up. It's coming up. We can't anticipate the motion. There's a motion on this coming up, members.
I am floored. We'll come to that, but somebody need help. But that said, Madam Speaker, I want to tell the member from Albert, and I'm glad you reminded me when you invited me to your meeting, to your committee, and we basically agreed to a number of things that have been done. So, but once I agreed to that, I pass it on to the technical people, and it's difficult for me to be able to keep up with every single thing that I'm doing, and I expected it. But then maybe we could have, reminded me, hey, maybe we'll follow up one or two things, and, by step at a time. The new chairman wanted that. Okay. It's incredible. It's incredible. I'm floored. The issue of succession planning is a challenge for the entire government system. And I've been saying this for some time now, Madam Speaker. And successive governments have to take responsibility for this. For too long, we've just been hiring people just to hire people. Political patronage. And because of that political patronage, today, we're finding these challenges that we do. For instance, the issue of succession planning. In many instances, we don't have. And I don't mean it as no disrespect to the public service. If you look at the public service, it's like a pear. Small, highly competent technical people at it, and then the bottom is a lot of people that we just hired, and that A, they either don't have the expertise, and B, we don't give them the proper training to try to make them come up the ranks. We just keep them there, and hire more people. And, everybody will tell you that government have too many workers. But yet every ministry will tell you they need more people. And they need more people because of that challenge that we're facing. And I hope that nobody try to take it out of context what I'm saying. Because the succession is a challenge. not only Director General, almost in every ministry, you will find this issue. And I agree with you on the matter of the issue of greater autonomy. We believe in these matters. And we believe on these matters of the autonomy so they could do a better job. And for the record, Madam Speaker, Mrs. Bradley has a combined package of $121,000, not $50,000 as what the honorable member of the opposition, leader of, well, I don't know which opposition, but that one over here, the member from MESOP made. No? That said, Madam Speaker, I want to thank both sides. There is no hidden agenda. That's why we're coming here. We're following the law. We could just operate without an Auditor General, but we want to follow the law, so we're doing it the proper way. Appoint one and acting for 4 months. It will be advertised. There's going to be, I guess, that it's your ministry who manages that. My ministry will manage the application process, and we'll ensure that everybody gets involved. That's just show the point now that I don't get involved because they're supposed to be autonomous, so I don't get involved in that sense. No? That said, Madam Speaker, thank you very much.
Honourable members, that motion is referred to the Constitution and Foreign Affairs Committee for examination, consideration, and report. I recognize the Honourable Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I seek the indulgence of this Honourable House to have this motion taken through all its stages this day.
Honourable members, the question is that this motion be taken through all its stages this day. All those in favour kindly say aye. Aye. Those against kindly say no. I think the ayes have. With your indulgence, I will apply Standing Order 91 on the general authority of the Speaker based on the length of motions, the number of motions to be debated today, and ask that we do a short recess of about 30 minutes to allow for lunch breaks for members, and then we will resume. So a 30-minute recess, please, and then we will resume.